AirAsia X tumbled by nearly 30% this morning as analysts warn that the worst is yet to come for the carrier after it posted its biggest ever quarterly loss. The counter fell to 5 sen before paring losses to close still 21% lower at 5.5 sen for a market cap of 228 million ringgit. Forex losses and wrong hedges against higher crude oil prices pulled AAX into a massive first quarter net loss of 549.7 million ringgit. CGS CIMB research kept the stock at reduce with a lower target price of 0 sen from 0.4 sen previously. It pointed out in a research note today that AAX is now in a desperate attempt to grasp at all the straws it can find and believes the group has not been paying its lessors, maintenance providers and suppliers since the fourth quarter of 2019. CGS CIMB said AAX's survival now depends on it securing a new 500 million ringgit bank loan, but the odds of that happening are low. Meanwhile, Public Invest Research said AAX is now in a severe bind, given its negative shareholders' equity position, with the worst of its financial troubles likely yet to be seen. Based on its estimates, the group may require at least 1.2 billion ringgit of equity funding to convert its shareholders' equity to a positive position. The group could also opt to issue perpetual bonds, though Public Invest said it could be a challenge. It maintained its underperform call on AAX with a lower target price of 1 sen. Former OneMDB CEO Datuk Shahrul Azra Ibrahim Halmi agreed today that the fund's acquisition of an independent power producer was a sham deal to deceive the board of directors that benefited international investment bank Goldman Sachs, fugitive financier Loh Teck Joe and other co-conspirators. Shahrul was back in court this morning for the OneMDB tenor trial. The bulk of the court proceedings centered around OneMDB Energy Langat's 2.75 billion ringgit purchase of Mastika Legenda, which held a 75% stake in Genting Sanyan Power, owner of the Genting Sanyan Kuala Langat Power Station. The deal was executed not long after OneMDB bought Tanjung Energy, which also owns several energy assets, for 10.64 billion ringgit. Throughout the cross-examination this morning, Defence Counsel Wan Aizuddin Wan Muhammad kept alluding that Shahrul may have been in cahoots with the conspirators and received kickbacks from Goldman Sachs. He also pointed out that there was no written approval by the board to allow OneMDB to proceed with the acquisitions. Shahrul, however, maintained he was not aware of the schemes at the material time, although he conceded that it was a fraud in hindsight. He also said that OneMDB's board had given him blanket approval to acquire energy assets for the fund. It's confirmed. Petronas is not fighting the 2 billion ringgit sales tax imposed by the Sarawak state government. The national oil giant withdrew its appeal over its failed judicial review application against Sarawak and the state's comptroller of state sales tax. At the same time, Sarawak withdrew its cross-appeal over the jurisdiction issue of the High Court. Sarawak started imposing an additional 5% tax on all petroleum products in the state starting January 2019. The extra sales tax came as a surprise then, as both Sarawak and Sabah were in talks with the PH government on their share of oil revenue under the Malaysian Agreement 1963. Petronas did not pay the tax, arguing that it already pays tax to Putrajaya. The sales tax also appears to overlap with the Petroleum Development Act 1974, which states that Petronas is the regulator of all oil and gas assets in the country. In response, Sarawak filed a 1.3 billion ringgit civil suit against the oil firm. That raised the curtain of the legal tussle between the state and Petronas, whose former president and group CEO Tan Sri Wan Zulkifli Wan Arifin stepped down on July 1st. Unisys Malaysia saw second quarter earnings jump more than twofold to 33.95 million ringgit, driven by higher sales volume as normal production resumed during the quarter, as well as foreign exchange gains. Quarterly top line rose 10.3% to 310.08 million ringgit. Unisys declared an interim dividend of 2 cents per share. For the first half, Net profit improved by 51.7% to 31.12 million ringgit on the back of 565.24 million ringgit in revenue, which was up 3.7% year-on-year. The semiconductor maker says global consumption and consumer confidence remain volatile amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Going forward, it remains cautious and will continue with stringent cost control measures and exercise restraint on capital expenditure. The group expects the operating environment to be challenging this year. The government still has an outstanding 4.763 billion ringgit worth of deferred GST refunds to be paid off. Deputy Minister of Finance 2, Muhammad Shah Abdullah, told Parliament today that there was an additional 9 billion ringgit in refunds claimed by businesses on top of 19.4 billion ringgit that had been claimed and processed previously. He said the delay was due to invalid bank registrant information and failure of registrants to respond and submit the relevant documents for verification. All the outstanding refunds are expected to be resolved by the end of this year. In June, Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz said the Customs Department is currently using the Pay First and Audit Later approach to expedite the payout of GST refunds to selected companies. Under the Goods and Services Tax Repeal Act 2018, the government is allowed a refund period of up to 6 years from September 2018.